that good? Can you hear me? Yeah. Hey everybody, lovely to be here. My name's Sophie, I'm Managing Director at Underwaterpistol. Thrilled to be joined by Marissa today from Brewdog. As some of you may know, Brewdog just recently launched on Shopify 3 weeks ago. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about their journey onto Shopify. Just to start by, I guess, setting the scene a little bit. So I guess Brewdog have been known as a disruptor brand, a brand to really push boundaries in the way that you interact with your customers. And I guess you faced challenges that led to a decision around e-com and how to kind of make a big change and push the brand forward. So let's dive into that a little bit deeper. Let's start by talking about why you kind of felt the need to change. So what were the challenges you were facing at Brewdog, in e-com in particular?
Yeah, I think on a very kind of top level, we started looking at our move and our change in tech stack from 3 pillars. So we were looking at our total cost of ownership, improving our customer experience, and of course improving our KPIs. But really going deeper, in the past kind of year or so, we found some challenges that really just weren't sitting right with me and the team. I felt like I was saying no a lot to the team, or not now, or that will take a while, or that will be expensive to develop. We were kind of making the customer problem our problem, or our problem, but also like our problem's the customer problem, sorry, I should say. And that also didn't sit well with me. I mean, we actually had like a page that said log out and log back in, which doesn't feel like that's a good customer journey at all, especially when you're just trying to buy some beer. And so that really kind of triggered our change of, we kind of need to change up what we're doing, we need to make it easier to run, and we need to make it easier for the customer to use our site and ultimately buy more beer.
Nice. And so we often speak to brands, and there's probably some of them in the room today, that are struggling, but not struggling enough to really kind of trigger a big change. Like, we all know that migrations are scary. What was really the thing that happened that made you kind of go, this has to happen now? And yeah, really kind of push that change forward.
Yeah, I think we were starting to talk about what we would do in terms of our site. Did we want to overhaul it? Did we want to start exploring another platform? And we were really kind of looking at a proof of concept at first. And essentially came to the beginning of this year, and we were looking at the numbers, we were looking at renewals, and really asking the questions like, do we want to do this and operate this way for another year and a half, 2 years? And the answer was no. And it was really not that it was easy to get over the line, but it was an easy decision from there to commit and try to convince our key stakeholders, our board, that this was the right thing to do, even though it was highly risky and scary, because we gave ourselves 3 to 4 months to do it. But it was the right decision that we felt. And so when we made that choice, when that switch flipped, we just put everything we could at it to make it happen.
Yeah, and I remember going from that kind of proof of concept to a place where it was like, this is now urgent, full steam ahead, and yeah, 3 to 4 months to do it, so thanks for that. And then going from there to kind of building the business case and getting buy-in from the key stakeholders and the board, that in itself can be quite challenging. How did you approach that?
Yeah, we kept it quite small at first. We wanted to really make sure that we were bringing in people at the right time, that it was the right idea. We kind of even had a top secret name for the project while we were formulating our ideas around it. And then we, basically, when we really decided, we felt like we were confident in the numbers and the business proposal and what it looked like, we asked for a meeting with our board, and it was held in one of our bars in Glasgow, tucked away in a back corner, gave the presentation, and from there it was like, yes, we have to do this, we agree. So we started to bring in more of the team and start to talk to them about it. How do they feel about the timelines? And actually it was quite almost a seamless conversation, because we had a team meeting in January and we had this like post-it session of what should be on our roadmap. And without any sort of anybody else knowing that we had this top secret project going in the background that we were thinking about releasing, everybody just put about 5 or 6 post-its up that said Shopify and no other context. So really when we said we're going for it, I think there was obviously a hesitation, but once they saw our plans, once they saw what we were looking to do, once they saw our timelines, it was quite easy to get the team on board and really get going, because everybody was already excited about it before we even got into it.
Nice. And there were 3 pillars that really kind of stood out. So the first was total cost of ownership, which you touched on. The second was user experience, and you spoke about kind of the customer and the challenges that they were facing. And the third was operator experience, so you wanted to give your team more autonomy, essentially. We also obviously had a kind of broader view of the Brewdog goals to grow revenue, grow profit year on year. How did we take those kind of 3 pillars and frame the kind of discovery process that we went through?
Yeah, I think it was for the total cost of ownership and everything that we had kind of going on the back end. We kind of had this Rolls Royce under the hood of all these different platforms and services, and really it was to take a look at that and be like, do we need all of this? What is it doing for us? We're a lean team, are we leveraging like these platforms in the way we should be? And what can we build into and leverage via Shopify natively that will work for us? And then start to add on apps and different things that we may need to enhance the experience in terms of the platform. So there was that bit of exploring what we actually needed and what we could start to strip out. In terms of customer experience, we went through in the discovery sessions, as well as a kind of design and phase of like asking our customers what they wanted, really having an outside view of like the UX experience on our site run by UWP. So I think we were all so into our site. We've been working on it for 5 years, and we couldn't almost sometimes see the problems. So it was really nice to get kind of outside perspective of like, how come you guys are doing it this way? This is confusing or something, in the most constructive way. And then the key revenue drivers is like looking for those like opportunities that we could introduce quite easily via Shopify. Different levers our team can start to pull without having to go through a whole development process. And start using those on site, which we're already kind of seeing things like recommenders and load up your basket are already kind of improving our AOV, and we've only been live for 3 weeks. So.
Nice. And on that user experience piece, obviously we went deep in discovery on that. Most brands that are looking to migrate, they assume that the best way to approach that is a full redesign, take the opportunity whilst you're doing a big project to redesign absolutely everything. We spoke really early on about our approach to that, and we kind of position the 3 pillars, again, of your site, your front-end experience, your back-end, and your content. And we discussed only making one big change at a time. How did you find the process of not attacking that full redesign? We obviously approached UX much more iteratively. How did you find that process, and how did you handle kind of things like internally people wanting to use the opportunity to make big change?
Yeah, I think visually when it comes to looking at the UX and the redesign, there's always a big temptation to say, let's start from scratch, let's totally introduce all these new things. But we didn't have a huge amount of time, so we didn't want to, and we want to see what the move to Shopify did for e-commerce before reintroducing or totally changing things up for the customer, because we already knew that there'll be a slightly different experience when the customer gets to site. It will look different, and that will be jarring for the customer. So giving it a refresh, and then taking at it of like, how is it doing, how are customers receiving it? Okay, we're ready to start incrementally introducing change and measuring that. Yep. Was the approach we wanted to take. So while it was tempting to be like, yes, rip that up, let's start again, really kind of making the necessary changes, starting from a goods level where we can measure introducing any sort of new design changes or anything like that as well.
Nice. And I guess in that process, we kind of took a really data-driven approach to the changes that we should make. And we're starting to see some of the kind of early signs of wins in the bottom of the funnel. And I guess now we've got a really good opportunity to iteratively move on from there. Look, we all know that migrations come with their risks, and they're scary for brands. What were some of the risks that you anticipated? How did we help you to identify them when they came up, as they do? How did we kind of tackle them together?
Yeah, I think the biggest risk we had like that was the most obvious one, I suppose, was time. So we didn't really have time. We couldn't miss our deadlines because we would be looking at like renewals or going down on the website, which was just an absolute no for us. We wanted to make sure we had business continuity. So it was really looking at, okay, this is everything we can do. What is the MVP approach? What is absolutely necessary to make sure that we hit our deadline and that we can continue on after? So I think that was the biggest thing, and working with UWP on what those timelines look like, of being realistic with, okay, maybe we can't do everything all at once, let's just focus on e-commerce. We did move in a few things, like we weren't originally going to have our home page sitting in Shopify. We decided this looks way too good, we need to do it. So just like to throw in a few curveballs, but I think that was the biggest one. Obviously, we have quite a few integrations. We were quite bold in what we were like, oh, we'll just, it'll be totally seamless, which it was, the switchover was, but we make sure that we were doing the right kind of marketing at the right times and not pushing too much and testing everything right off the bat was another thing that we looked at. So just making sure like risks in terms of like what customers are seeing, what the revenue is like, was managed through to launch as well. So time and I guess revenue driving and traffic to site, two things that we looked at.
I'm glad you flagged time. I guess for any brand in the room that is considering migration, please give an agency longer than 3 or 4 months. I may have a few more grey hairs than I did. So we touched on the risk of migration. There were obstacles, there were challenges. How did we kind of tackle them together collaboratively?
I think it's as soon as we started maybe noticing that we needed to kind of swarm on something, it was just getting everybody on the right call, making sure we knew what we need to do now, next, and later. Because when there's something that's happening that you need to do quickly, it was quite easy to be like, oh, but we need to do X, Y, and Z as well. And it's like focusing on the right things to make sure that we're getting things up and running was key. So in that launch period, we spent a lot of time on phone calls and a few things that we did internally at Brewdog, like we have in our offices, we've got like a bunch of couches, we all sat around, all of our laptops open, and we just kept running customer journeys and troubleshooting with all of us in a room. And so I think, it's just making sure you identify those problems, focus in on exactly what's happening, and get the job done, and try not to let like some of the noise interfere with getting the most important things done.
Yeah. I think you also did a very good job of kind of making sure that we had that one point of contact and we weren't hearing too much of that noise as well. So kind of, I guess, protect our time on the things that mattered most. So it's early days. We launched 3 weeks ago. What have you seen so far? What's the feedback been? Any kind of early success signals?
Yeah, I mean, so far, people love the kind of, even though we didn't do a full redesign, people are loving the kind of refresh on the site. They're loving the kind of new features that we have introduced that were really easy to leverage via Shopify. We are, one of our problems in our old site is we were able to get people to site, but we were struggling to get them to convert at checkout, and that was down to the journey. And so we're already starting to notice some early indicators of that checkout conversion rate improving. People are using the kind of load up your bag features and adding things along the journey. Things are a bit clearer to customers around, we've got quite complex discount models with like our equity punk shareholders and staff and regular promo pricing and discounts and everything. So that kind of UI has become a lot clearer throughout the whole customer journey. So I think that has been really positive and excited to see how the next few months go.
Nice. One of the really interesting ways actually that you mentioned you kind of measured success post-migration was customer service tickets and how much noise you were hearing. I know, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think there was a worry that we would launch and then the customer service team would get tons and tons of tickets of things not working, of accounts not being correct, whatever it was. And we launched with barely any customer service tickets going through, which is a huge success indicator because people were happy with the site. It was very, very manageable, and that has been like a huge positive feedback point from our shareholders, that like our tickets in have been very minimal. And when they are starting to trend, we're really easily to identify like actually what is the issue and quickly solve it. So I think that has been greatly appreciated by the internal team, because that would have been a bit of a nightmare. But so far so good.
Nice. And you spoke earlier about checkout and the kind of improvements that you're seeing there already really early on. That was one of the reasons that you chose Shopify. Tell us a little bit more about that kind of choice. Why Shopify?
Yeah, I think we started talking to Shopify just quite openly and looking at like scoping out all of our integrations and everything kind of mid June last year, but that's when we were talking about doing a proof of concept B2B site. And I think what really started to kind of ramp up our excitement about it was not only being able to spend all this time making sure that it was scoping it and making sure that it was the right product for us to move to. I think during that time we started going through like our biggest time of the year in Q4 with Black Friday and all of our typical kind of stress around that. And then I was reading all the stuff coming in from Shopify's post Black Friday, Cyber Monday reports of how many checkouts per second and their scalability. And I thought about our struggles with that, and I was like, this just seems like the right choice for us. Like, make those times of the years easy for us to use. So that was like one of the triggers. Lots of amazing brands signing up with Shopify. That's super inspiring to read about, and it almost became written in the sky, written in the stars.
And now that you're on Shopify, what's next?
Yeah, so I think we've done an approach basically because of the time where we've got our kind of e-commerce homepage and some content in our Shopify world, and we've got our what we're now calling our legacy site, which hosts a lot of our content and a lot of our bars and hotel content on a subdomain. And so we're keen to move all that in, go through discovery and UX refresh on those pages as well. So that's a big thing for us. Another thing that we want to do is within Q4 is measure our move to Shopify and then start identifying into the next year what our roadmap looks like to help kind of improve any KPIs. So we'll start to look at that and those kind of incremental changes we can make. And then loyalty is a huge thing for us. So we have used loyalty. We had a loyalty program called Planet Brewdog. It's changed a few times. We have more analog approaches to loyalty as well. So we really want to embark on a user research journey with that. What do our customers want? How do we bring it omni-channel with our bars, as well as our e-commerce experience? So looking at that and hopefully kind of looking towards relaunch of our loyalty program in 2025.
Nice. And then last question, for any brands that are sat in the room considering migration, what advice would you share, having just come off the back?
Give yourself time. I feel like that's a theme here. If you're thinking about doing it, really just get in contact with Shopify, with any agencies, and start talking about it sooner rather than later, because it's not going to hurt just to start exploring other options and what you can do. I think it's definitely worth exploring, especially if you're kind of saying to yourself, we're making these hacks, we're making the customer problem like we're not helping them, we're having our problems surface to the customer. If you're saying no a lot, if you feel like your kind of roadmap is stuck, I think all these questions is making you look at your tech stack and maybe look at what you can do to improve it. Maybe Shopify is the one to do that. But yeah, I would start now if you're looking at it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we did that really kind of helped the journey was put together a really strong business case and got that buy-in from all of the key stakeholders. And I think, especially given the kind of tight timeline that we had, making sure that everybody was on board and coming along on that journey. So I guess my advice to brands would be start that process really early, and pull together a really solid business case that gets everybody involved eventually. Cool. Should we do a couple of questions? Sure. Yeah. Anybody got any questions? Feel free.
Surely someone's got a question. Yeah, mine's kind of just around USP. So, you know, what's your unique selling point with Brewdog versus kind of like your typical retail omni-channel perspective? So, what differentiates your site from walking into a retailer?
Yeah, I think the community that we're building around it and the emphasis that we go around our customers. So we've got like this amazing group of Equity Punk shareholders that we've been, that are investors in our company that have been since early on. We really make sure that they feel welcome when they come to our site, that there's special offers, product exclusivity, and making sure that when we expand into loyalty programs, that their customer journey is considered alongside bringing in any new people into our planet, Brewdog as well. So I think those kind of like offers that we do and kind of giving them special parts of the site to look at, and I would love to explore it more of like when you log in as an Equity Punk or as a Planet Brewdog loyalty member, is giving you a totally different version of the site and getting people excited and bringing in more community-wise there as well.
Anyone else?
If anybody does want to come and have a chat afterwards, we'll loiter.
Thank you.